Thank you for inviting me as well, and to all of LCR. It is great to be back with you to talk about not only some of the issues that I've continued to work on, but some of the changes that have been happening over the last few years in Washington, D.C. As Jim said in his introduction, I started my public service at the age of 17. I take that oath of serving my country very seriously. 16 years in the Air Force was not only a family tradition, but it's why I focus so much on veterans. If you wear the cloth of this great nation, if you've been willing to put your life on the line for our freedoms, I think that this government owes you not only a debt of gratitude, but should make sure that it upholds the promises that it committed to you. And that includes health care benefits and making sure that the VA is always making sure that our veterans are pushed up first. So they get choice in health care, no secret waiting list, no waiting lists at all. But if you served in the United States military, can you stand real quick? Let us show our appreciation. Thank you. I also want to introduce Eddie. Where's Eddie at? Eddie Mendoza back here, and they also served his country. Eddie is our field rep, but he also leads our Hispanic Roundtable. A lot of the issues that I focus on in Washington, D.C., many of which come out of the Roundtable on issues like ADA, where we had a number of minority businesses here locally get targeted. Even immigration, water, some of the different challenges that we have here that might be a little bit different than other areas of our state or other areas of the country. So I appreciate all of you that work with Eddie. So I got a bunch of different things that I wanted to go through today. Certainly immigration and water are part of that. I want to talk about jobs and the economy. T&I, some of the things that are happening in Washington, D.C. as well. And then really I want to spend my time answering your questions. Anything that you have for me, questions, comments, concern, this is about you and your time, and allow me the opportunity to exchange ideas and hear from you. But specifically on immigration, obviously I've done some things differently this year, things I never thought I would do. Spending a lot of time with a parliamentarian, trying to find any way possible that you could get two parties to come together to address a very, very difficult issue. Learned actually from the Freedom Caucus. The Freedom Caucus of Minority in the House utilizes every rule possible to be able to hold up bills or bring bills up. So I used some of the same techniques. I introduced a rule. Wanted to show that not only did we have a huge number of Republicans that were willing to sign on and address immigration, but ultimately doing a discharge petition. These are very arcane rules that we have in the House, but it forces a vote. And to get Republicans and Democrats to come together and say, we've got to address this issue as a country and find the best American solution was important. So driving something and actually pushing both parties to address an issue, I thought was critical. Now it's important to me because it's a personal issue. Absolutely, it is a big issue here in our community. It is a big issue in California, and it is a big issue for our country. But somebody who helped my father-in-law to gain his citizenship, it is a personal issue. To have kids that have come out of the shadows, have done what their government has asked them to do, to pass a background check, to pay a fine and a fee, to put their names on a list, to go out and actually start working in our community or going to school. The dynamic has changed, and now these kids, their lives are in uncertainty. One of those kids is a family member of mine, a DACA recipient. This is a personal issue to me, and that's why I'm willing to stand up to anybody, either party, and go to anybody that'll listen to get this issue resolved. We need a top-to-bottom reform of our overall immigration system. Now, last time I was here, I was talking about the Gang of 8 bill, the bill that came out of the Senate. Every Democrat in the Senate supported, every Democrat in the Senate voted for it, every Democrat in the House signed on as co-authors. I was one of the Republicans that co-authored the bill. Because a lot of what we put into our bill this time came out of that very same bill, dealing with border security. But instead of having $46 billion, which was the Gang of 8 bill, that many of you asked me to support. We only had $25 billion in ours this year, but it was enough. Because I think we've got to give the American public a guarantee that we actually solve our crisis along the border. We've got to make sure that we're addressing unaccompanied minors. I visited the facility, the child home in the Bay Area. We have 3 of them over there right now. But I wanted to see specifically those that have been separated from their parents, but also unaccompanied minors that have come across over the last 2 administrations. For the last 2 decades, we've had unaccompanied minors that come across the border. They're held by Border Patrol for 72 hours, transferred to Health and Human Services, put on a plane with a third party, a private contractor will get on a plane with them. They'll go to New York or Pennsylvania or California with no coordination with other agencies of where they're actually going to go. Now, the first 72 hours, Border Patrol initiates the conversation of why are you seeking asylum? Where are your family members? Where do you expect to resettle to? So that we actually have some information. But as I went over to the Bay Area last week and interviewed some of these kids, 2 girls were going to Houston. So they came across in Texas, got shipped to California, third-party contractor, got on an airplane with them, took them to the Bay Area. They're now at this house for 30 to 45 days, only to get back on a plane and go to Houston to be with family members. It doesn't matter who's in the Oval Office or what party's in control. That's a bad way of doing things. We can do better. We need to make sure that we've got some efficiencies in the system. But most of all, we have to make sure that the safety and welfare of the children is always there. That's why I went to visit that facility. That's why I was down on the border yesterday to actually see what Border Patrol is doing with those that are coming across the border today and make sure the health and welfare of these kids is intact. But this is a personal issue for me, and one that I'll never back down on. As long as you'll continue to elect me, I will continue to fight for this issue until we actually find a resolution. I'll stand up to either party, because both parties have some good ideas on this. But it's going to take an American solution in all 50 states coming together to solve this crisis. Border security, making a merit-based system, and protecting dreamers from day one. There should not be any uncertainty there. And we have many in our community. As we went through high school graduation, I talked to a number of dreamers, had teachers that would bring them up to me, and just have a great conversation. Kids that actually signed up for DACA, but at the time, one of the individuals from Ceres High, her sister couldn't sign up because she didn't age in at the time. So she's stuck in limbo. Another kid, he was a valedictorian. Showed up proud, had the gold cord on. And I was talking to him, asking him about his dreamer status. Well, he never signed up for DACA. His parents were undocumented, and they quite frankly didn't trust the government and said, don't sign up. So we have dreamers that are out there, that are in our community, that have graduated from our high schools, that are trying to live the American dream. We need to make sure that we've got some certainty in this system. It is something I'm going to continue to fight for. Real quickly, one of the big issues that we're also working on is healthcare. We've got to find a solution to healthcare. There's been some great expansion in our community to make sure that more are covered. But just adding people to Medi-Cal without addressing the access piece of it still leaves overcrowding in our emergency rooms. We had that before the Affordable Care Act. We have overcrowding here in this community now. We actually have to have an honest conversation about the costs of health care, about the increasing rates that continue to affect hardworking taxpayers, and really look at the future of our health care system. And we'll have a great debate on it. Look, we're having one in the state of California right now. There was a bill that the president or the governor didn't support that would have been would have been 4 times our current budget. We're having the same debate on the national level. It would be $32 trillion. And we're having CBO analyze what that tax rate would be for every individual across the country. I think people should have a right to know. We ought to have an honest debate of what our healthcare system looks like. But here in our community, we have a separate problem that we've had for quite some time on access. We've had a shortage of doctors. And while we've had medical schools interested in moving to Fresno, we've had UC Merced wanting to expand to a medical school, every time we talk to a medical school, they say, well, why would we move there if we graduate students, but they have no residency program to go to afterwards? We have to address our residency program. So this year, I held strong. We actually got to the point where we doubled our residency program, and we added federally qualified health centers. Because in our community, while we've seen an expansion in Medi-Cal, it's our federally qualified health centers who are seeing a lot of those patients. Why wouldn't they be able to have a residency program too? Even though it's a newer program, they should have residencies as well. If you serve in our community, you have a residency in our community, most likely the odds are you'll stay in our community where we need these new doctors. But that's not enough. Residency programs are important to bring new doctors here and hopefully get them to stay here. But if you're not paying any individual, whether it's a business or a doctor, they're either not going to stay in business or they're not going to stay in business here. And a lot of our doctors can't afford to see Medi-Cal patients when they're losing money taking those on. So we have a lower reimbursement rate here. We need to increase that. And so we started a pilot program. I've worked with the California Medical Association and the Stanislaus Society here locally to make sure that as we put this pilot program in place, that we actually pay doctors what they should to be able to see these patients, and we pay them quickly. So this new pilot program is being implemented right now. We want to make sure that locally we can show that if you pay doctors correctly, they will address this access void that we have today. We want patients to be seen by the doctor that they want when they want. But that's going to be making sure that we expand access. On jobs in the economy, I'm proud to say we just did our 8th annual jobs fair. We've had thousands of people come through the jobs fair every single year. This was something I started my first year when we were about 10 percentage points higher in unemployment. We were sitting about 17% unemployment, while we still lag behind the rest of the country. 6% unemployment is the best that we've seen in over a decade. And we're still seeing people come out to the job fair looking for new work. So it was a great thing to have, especially as wages are going up. Valley unemployment is being addressed at that same time. On transportation infrastructure, I currently chair the Rail, Pipelines and Hazardous Materials Committee. I've been focused on expanding ACE train, bringing BART into the valley as well, getting people to and from home quicker so they can spend more time with the family, and getting people off the road. But as we expand our rail system, we've also got to look at freight rail. We want to have dedicated track on passenger rail so we are more efficient on freight rail. That helps us not only with ACE and having more train capacity, but actually when we're building a logistics hub, the largest logistics hub in the world, we've got to make sure that we're expanding our freeways and our freight rail at the same time. And so that's one thing that we're addressing from the rail subcommittee. But I'm also working to be the next chair of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. We've got to expand our infrastructure throughout the entire valley. We will always be an ag community. It is our #1 industry. But what we're seeing on the west side of this valley, up and down Highway 5, are million-square-foot warehouses, a logistics hub. As we're bringing things from the ports, we're having an inland port, so we can create thousands of high-paying jobs right here in the valley. But that's going to mean we've got to continue to expand Highway 5, Highway 132, where I was able to secure the only grant in California this year. We've got to expand these highways and freeways so that we can have greater goods movement. Actually, expanding our freight rail as well. As Chair T&I, that would also oversee our airports, our ports, Coast Guard, Army Corps of Engineers. We have a lot of levies that have to be addressed, but let me tell you the #1 issue. I asked to be on this committee from day one. And I had opportunities to move to other committees. As you stay there longer, you can gain seniority and move to more powerful committees. This is the most powerful committee in my community, because this is the committee that addresses water storage. We've not built water storage since '79, and we've doubled our population. We have a growing ag industry. We do a lot of exports, but if we don't focus on new water storage, we're going to be hurting worse than we are today in the valley. There's nothing that affects our economy more than shutting off our water. There's nothing that affects our community more from a social justice standpoint than shutting off our water or subscribing to our underground table. We see bad water quality issues up and down the valley. We see certain areas of the valley that go without water. You see certain areas of the valley that have had to bring in temporary showers to the middle of the town so kids could actually take showers before school. We have FEMA bringing in bottled water. That's not the Central Valley I know. We've got to build more water storage. That means Sites Reservoir. That means Shasta. Expanding Shasta to what it was once designed to be. Temperance Flat up above Frine. Expanding Los Vaqueros. We have the ability to do this. And we ought to be doing it quickly. Dealing with one agency, one decision, not going through decades and then going through the process a second time. We can't afford to wait decades. Nor can we afford to have our funding continue to be held up. We passed a water bond that has $2.7 billion to water storage. I also have the new Water Act from a federal level so that we can have a zero interest loan or a low interest loan that will allow us to borrow the money to build the infrastructure with the $2.7 billion state match, but we've got to get it done today. The future of this valley has to do with the future of our water. And at the same time we're battling to build new water storage, you have the Bay Delta plan that wants to force 40% of our water out to the ocean. That'll create the social justice issue in our community if you continue to push our water out to the ocean, taking away our jobs, taking away the quality of water that we drink, and leaving us in a position where agriculture industry suffers. So I think we're at a real crossroads right now. There's going to be a real debate this year on whether or not we have unimpeded, unimpaired flows that push 40% of our water out to the ocean, leaving reservoirs like New Melones empty 1 out of every 4 years. And by the way, that's power, hydro, clean power to 250,000 homes here in the valley as well. You take away our energy, our water quality, or we can start building things again. It is time that we put this state on a new path. One that will revive the valley and our agriculture industry and take us to a new point. We're going to have to fight for it. But it's a fight we can win and a fight we deserve.